Welcome in everyone to the second episode of the Larsonland podcast. I'm your host, Sawyer Hill, joined by my good friend and co host, Dylan Bradshaw. If you're new here, we are the owners of Larsonland on Instagram, and we come on here every Wednesday and just talk everything involving Kyle Larson. Before we get started with today's podcast, we would like to first extend our thoughts and prayers out to the family and friends of David Gilliland Racing's Steven Stotts. Steven was the driver of the number 17 ARCA Team's hauler and passed away Tuesday morning in an unfortunate accident. NASCAR wouldn't be possible without all these hauler drivers that drive coast to coast each and every week, helping put on the sport that we all love. I'd also like to thank everyone for the massive support on our first podcast episode last week. It means a lot to see so many folks tuning in so early on in the podcast. Lastly, we'd like to give a huge shout out to the Kyle Larson Nation Fan Club Facebook group. Their link will be in the description of the YouTube version of the podcast, so if you get a chance, go ahead and check those guys out for us. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into the content, Dylan. How's your week been going so far, man?
Yeah, it's going good. We witnessed another great week of racing, which seems to be a trend with these next gen cars. And like Sawyer mentioned, we appreciate all the support and feedback we've gotten this past week on the podcast. I decided to take up some feedback we received and upgraded my microphone, so hopefully it's a much better listening experience for everyone. And with that being said, let's get into it.
Yeah, man, the new mic sounds great. I'm definitely glad that you made that purchase. So today we're just going to kind of go in and recap some of the racing that happened down at Las Vegas. We will talk a little bit about some potential upcoming dirt races on the schedule for Kyle, and then also just have some general conversation about Rick Hendrick and Hendrick Motorsports as well. So, the exciting racing did continue on this past weekend in Las Vegas. Kyle was able to pull out a second place finish behind his teammate Alex Bowman. I think we saw another great finish in my opinion. It kind of puts us at 3 for 3 on thrillers so far this season. Daytona, always produces really good finishes there, just the nature of the racing. And then last week at Auto Club, obviously Kyle picking up a win over Daniel Suarez. And this week, I think we just really did not expect Kyle to pull out a second place finish. And the final restart, the final two laps were just, great racing. Nothing really else we could ask for from the next gen car with the three races we have seen so far this season. So we did see a little bit of everything in this week's race. We'll touch on pretty much everything. Um, Dylan, what was your overall analysis of the race for Kyle this week?
Yeah, didn't expect much to come of it from those early penalties he had. He pit twice early on, I believe, 30th lap on the competition caution. Then the speeding penalty, of course, he got that sent him to the rear with, I believe it was around 42 to go. So interesting to see him make his way through the field, and I definitely didn't expect him to come and finish second. So this is probably one of the few times where I'm content with the second place finish, all things considered.
Yeah, I agree. I was very happy with the second place finish. As we talk about all the things that happened throughout the course of the race for Kyle. He was able to lead a good section of the race there at one point, and he kind of looked like he might have the car to win the race, but then other times it didn't really look like it. I know Saturday in qualifying, it looked like he had a really fast car. I thought watching qualifying that he was going to be a big contender for the lead and really just able to put the car wherever he wanted to. But at the end of the day, it was a up and down race for Kyle. I know it's a little bit early to be talking about championships and the playoffs here for NASCAR, but we talk about it in other sports all the time. Talk about it in football. I know we're big Baltimore Ravens fans, and in other sports, we talk about peaking too soon. I think that a race like this is good for a team that just won a championship and they're, starting to defend that championship this year. I think having to overcome some adversity in a race like this is good, and it's a good wake up call for Kyle Larson and the HendrickCars.com number 5 team.
Yeah, for sure. You touched on adversity, and I think that's something that a lot of these teams are seeing with this new next gen car. It's interesting to see all of these new teams coming out. We touched last week on Richard Childress and Tyler Reddick and Dylan and some other quick guys like Eric Jones leading the pack at Auto Club, and we saw the same thing today. big standout guy on Sunday was Ross Chastain. He was very fast, definitely the guy to beat, it seemed, especially at the end of stage two. I believe Larson was leading stage two, and he lost the lead to Chastain with around 5 laps left. And that ended up leaving Larson with a third place finish in stage two. But Chastain definitely seemed like the guy to beat in that race. He was very fast, and he ended up finishing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said last week, we talked about some of those guys that we usually don't see up front that we've been seeing this year up at the front of the pack. And, Chastain is another one of those guys. I mean, Daniel Suarez unfortunately got taken out in an incident earlier in the race that wasn't really anything to do, wasn't really his fault by any means. And I think we would have probably seen both of the Trackhouse cars up towards the front. But obviously, Chastain was the car to beat. He did not end up winning the race. But I think that brings us to our next topic of conversation, the late race pit strategy for Team Hendrick to take two tires instead of four there at the end.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see. A lot of teams took 4 tires, and Hendrick just ended up taking a 2 tire approach, and it paid off for them. Chase Elliott finished ninth, and Byron finished fifth, and obviously Bowman taking home the win, and Larson finishing two. But cool to see a team taking a different strategy from everyone else, and it paying off. The drivers touched on that they were very surprised with how much grip the tires had, so it's cool to see that pay off.
Yeah, I mean, I know myself, I was very surprised that any of the Hendrick drivers were able to win that race. And then, Kyle finished second, a 1-2 for Hendrick. So it was definitely awesome there. I know that was what I personally wanted them to do. I actually didn't get to watch the end of the race. I was on a flight back from Jacksonville. We were down at the Amelia Island Concourse de Elegance. It's just a big car show down there. And, had a great time, but on the way back, unfortunately, didn't get to watch the end of the race. So I was kind of just texting back and forth with you, trying to figure out what was going on. Really missed the last 50, 60 laps. Got the plane Wi Fi, paid $8 for that. Total ripoff. So just a tip to anyone listening: don't buy the plane Wi-Fi. It was absolutely horrible, and just luckily was able to text about the end of the race and kind of feel what was happening through Dylan's words.
Yeah, I was listening to the team scanner on the NASCAR app. I recently got that, so definitely provides some good insight. But yeah, I was texting Sawyer the whole way, and it got pretty interesting when the pit crew got Larson up 5 positions to first. So Sawyer like did not believe it whatsoever, and it was hard to like relay the excitement through text. But yeah, overall, you mentioned visiting Amelia Island. How was that? What kind of cars did you see? What did you see there? How was the whole experience?
Yeah, Amelia Island was great. I mean, I don't if anybody listening has been there before, just leave a comment and talk a little bit about your experience at Amelia. But we've been going for the past maybe 5 or 6 years now, and it's an awesome time down there. The weather was great. A lot of good food, and just get to look at a lot of amazing cars. New cars, and just how things have changed over the course of history. I mean, this year they had a lot of NASCAR stuff, unlike other years. Chip Ganassi was actually the honoree of the event this year, so they had a couple seminars with Chip, kind of just talking about his background and stuff, and they had a specific NASCAR discussion on Saturday with Chip Ganassi and Kyle Petty, Rusty Wallace, Ricky Rudd, Jeff Hammond, a couple other guys, and I mean, it really is a good time to hear some of these guys in the sport just talk about the way they got their feet wet and got into the sport. You really don't realize sometimes how these are just normal everyday guys. I mean, we talk about it a lot with Kyle all the time, how he literally will stop and talk to any fan or stop and sign anybody's autograph. But I'm not as familiar with some of these older drivers and crew chiefs, but man, it was just awesome listening to Kyle Petty and Chip and those guys talk on Saturday.
It's crazy the progression NASCAR has made. I know one thing you sent to me, which is actually pretty crazy. Looking at the old NASCARs and how they hand painted them versus today, how they go and wrap the cars, and I can't imagine the time spent and the expertise that it takes to be able to paint those cars.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that just it's hard to imagine in today's day and age, just having somebody spend the time to paint each and every race car. I mean, we saw it this past weekend with Kyle Busch going to a backup car after wrecking in practice. I mean, they just threw the new wrap on the car, on the backup car, and rolled it out. And obviously, they had a lot of mechanical work to do, but you know, in the old days, I mean, they would be painting that race car up as the guys are working on uh, stuff from the mechanical aspects of it. So definitely cool to see some history of the sport and hear some of some of the legends just really talk about their experiences and how they got their start in NASCAR. So getting back a little bit to Las Vegas, I wanted to ask you, Dylan. I mean, this is 2 weeks in a row now that I think we can all agree that the Hendrick cars really weren't the fastest cars in the field, but they were able to pull out a win at the end of the day. Does this worry you at all? Having just a little bit less speed than some of the other cars up front?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's nice to see the new teams and the new cars coming up front, but touching on Hendrick, they definitely show signs of still being like a top team in the races. Kyle showed some spurts of greatness throughout the race, but of course the penalty set him back a bit. And they're definitely not the fastest. As I mentioned, Chastain, he was very quick, but I think it's just a big adjustment that these teams have to make. And you know what they say, the cream always rises to the top. So I think as the races go on, that Hendrick will definitely like show to be at the top still and continue their success for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think that Hendrick is still learning with this new car, and we've seen 2 races in a row where they've really just done a tremendous job managing the race from um, a crew chief standpoint, and in each team just being able to find a way to win the race. I mean, we talk about that a lot in NASCAR. It's really about how you can find a way to win it, and we see guys like Kyle Busch this week where he probably should have won that race and looked like he was going to win that race, but Hendrick found the way to win and beat Kyle Busch, and it's just I think that as the season progresses, we will see with every race, we'll see new trends developing, and we will see the good teams rise to the top, like you said.
For sure, and a big thing that separates these teams as well. It's not just the driver going out there and getting it done. It's everyone in charge and the pit crew, and touching on that again, the pit crew is the reason that Kyle got a chance to win. We look back at Phoenix last year in the championship race, crazy one to watch. We all thought it was over. The fantastic season Kyle had was slowly just diminishing. And then the pit crew had that great stop to put him up to give him the chance to win the championship. And like you said before, I think that's what separates these teams. And like a great pit crew can put the driver in a position to get the win, and it's not all on the driver.
Right. I mean, this is over the years we've really seen how much of uh, a leader in the industry Hendrick Motorsports has been. Just always seem to put together the right people, and I think there's something to be said about that with Rick Hendrick and now Jeff Gordon kind of taking on a bigger role in the organization. I mean, Rick Hendrick has always been able to put the right people together. We talk about Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus winning 7 championships together. It's just you don't get pairings like that too often, and I it's really reminiscent to me. Watching Cliff and Kyle, how they handle and manage a race, obviously in very different ways compared to Chad and Jimmy, but just the professionalism displayed by these guys. Rick Hendrick always seems to find very professional people and put them in the right place in order to win. And I think that goes right along with the crew members. Having a good crew that works together, it means a lot, and ultimately won the championship for Kyle last year at Phoenix. So, speaking of Phoenix, I mean, We're heading there next weekend. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But before we get to that, I wanted to just go back a little bit to last week's conversation about the little feud between Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. Now, it came out, I think Kyle was the first one to talk about it, that Rick Hendrick did have a sit down meeting with his drivers. What do you think was said in that meeting on, I think Monday it was?
Yeah, I think it was just, just a meeting that had to happen, of course, with all of the tension and, media always stirring everything out of proportion and making it a bigger deal than it actually was. But I think he just sat down and gave him a talk to like put things in place and, tell them both that they're teammates and, this can't continue. And we're seeing a similar role with Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, kind of as we did with Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson. They're definitely some successful drivers, and you don't want them to feud on the racetrack. So it's important for Rick Hendrick and the entire team to, set things straight so nothing happens in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think that the drivers just they reacted great this week at Las Vegas. I mean, the strategy at the end of the race, I think it really displayed how Hendrick Motorsports can work together and win a race. Honestly, I know Kyle wasn't thinking about Hendrick winning that race there at the end, but when you put three cars on the same strategy with William and Chase and Kyle, you give yourself a really good chance to win that race with one of the cars, and I think that's important. I mean, we definitely would love to see a Hendrick car in victory lane compared to, Kyle Busch or you know, any of the Gibbs cars, or I mean even Chastain. We wanna see the Hendrick cars out front and in victory lane, especially Kyle. But I think just this week, I think the beef is squashed between Chase and Kyle, and really just a great display of that this week at Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mentioned, the Hendrick guys definitely finished well this week. Elliott finished ninth, Byron finished fifth, Bowman finished first, and Larson finished second. So great race for the Hendrick cars. And as we said before, I definitely think they will continue to progress and stay at the top of the races that we have left this season.
So just kind of looking ahead to this weekend's events, we do have two dirt events on Friday night and Saturday night that Kyle may potentially be running at the Thunderbolt Raceway in Tulare, California. This is a track that Kyle won the Trophy Cup in 2013 in a thriller between his brother-in-law Brad Sweet. If you have a chance, there's videos on YouTube. I definitely recommend checking out the finish in that race. Um, right now, it's not 100% confirmed that Kyle will be there with the World of Outlaws on Friday and Saturday night, but we're pretty sure he's going to be there. And if you want to watch that race live, you can catch it on Dirt Vision. Both nights, the racing action will start at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So, also next weekend, we will see Kyle Larson and the HendrickCars.com number 5 team head out to Phoenix Raceway. Kyle will look to defend his race win from last season with the NASCAR Cup Series. I think actually this week Kyle will be running the Valvoline scheme for the first of 3 races this season. It, I mean, just a beautiful car, Dylan.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always a nice thing to see him run that red Valvoline. He's shown his success last year. He ran the Valvoline scheme 3 times. He ran the red Valvoline scheme twice. He both times he ran the red Valvoline scheme actually got to win his Nashville win and his Bristol win in the playoffs. So it's definitely exciting to see him head into Phoenix. A track that we've seen him be great at. Obviously winning his championship last year where he led 107 laps and he does pretty well at Phoenix, so it's going to be nice to see him in that red Valvoline and this next gen car at Phoenix next week.
Yeah, and I know it. I know the paint scheme doesn't affect how fast the car goes, but I mean, I have just over the years I've been a little bit superstitious about paint schemes, you could say, and back when I was watching Jimmy Johnson a lot of time, and he would always run that white lightning paint scheme, and it seemed like he would just always just runs so good in that scheme. And I think very, very similar here with Kyle in the Valvoline scheme. When he's in that car, I expect him to to be up front leading laps.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of drivers, people could call them like curse schemes and so on, but I think it's good that Kyle doesn't have a ton of schemes. His primary is the Hendrick car scheme, but the schemes like Valvoline that he does run, he seems to do well in. So it will be interesting to see in the future if he does pick up any additional schemes, if he will continue to run well in those. But like you said, it's a superstitious thing, and we'll just see as the season goes on.
So, back on January 25th, Kyle actually tested at the Phoenix Raceway. I think this was right before he went down to drive the late model down at Golden Isles, and he actually was fastest time. He had the fastest time in that test session. So my question for you is, how do you like Kyle's chances for setting the pole time in qualifying Saturday? I mean, he was fastest in testing in the next gen car, so maybe it'll translate over.
Yeah, these practices we've seen, he's definitely practiced and qualified well, and so far it's translated into the actual race. Obviously Daytona doesn't really matter as much, super speedway, that type of racing. The practice and qualifying doesn't really translate to that as much. But he did well at Auto Club. I know he qualified, I believe, 13th, but he still showed to be one of the fastest cars out there as he ran through the pack. And he qualified well for Sunday's race at Las Vegas. So it's showing to translate over relatively well. And when he is one of the fastest cars in qualifying, he's usually one of the fastest cars in the race.
Yeah, Dylan, I agree with you there. I think Kyle will have a pretty good chance to sit on the Bush pole come Sunday at Phoenix. So, as we wrap things up here today, we will take a quick look at this weekend's schedule at Phoenix. Like I said, I think Kyle could be attending those two NOS Energy Drink World of Outlaws sprint car races at the Thunderbolt Raceway in Tulare, California. Those races will be at 5 p.m. on Dirt Vision, respectively, on Friday and Saturday nights. But for the NASCAR Cup Series, on Saturday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox Sports 1, they will get their practice session in at 2:05 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. They will go out for Bush Pole qualifying. And then on Sunday, of course, we will have the Ruoff Mortgage 500 at the Phoenix Raceway, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. The race distance for this week will be 312 laps and 312 miles long. Stage 1 will be 75 laps. Stage 2 will be 115 laps, and then the final stage of the race will be 122 laps long. Like I said, you can catch the race on Fox if you're watching on TV. The radio broadcast this weekend will be on MRN and Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. So that is all we have for you guys today. Thanks again for tuning in and listening this week. We will be back again next Wednesday for our third episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening on Apple, please follow our podcast so you do not miss a thing. Have a great rest of the week, everybody, and enjoy the race on Sunday. We will see you in the next episode.